Hello and welcome to my first election coverage live from the Spartan Newsroom. I'm Austin Short. We're live all day today with our first ever election coverage coming to you from Michigan State's campus. Our guest this morning is Emanuele, who is a radio journalist. Thank you for joining us today, Emanuele.
Thanks for having me.
So I wanted to start with your time with St. Louis Public Radio. You were reporting there during Ferguson, which is obviously a turbulent time. Could you tell us about your experience there?
I worked in St. Louis. I moved there in July, about 2 weeks before Michael Brown was shot. I moved there specifically to cover race and culture on a fellowship. So it was it was a very difficult experience because I was a new reporter there in a new city, but it was also an experience where I learned a lot. It was also challenging to cover such kind of a sensitive topic and make sure that you felt like you were doing justice to what you were supposed to be talking about. So I worked there, covered stories for my local station, covered stories for national public radio, did interviews on lots of different shows. A very hectic but insightful time as a journalist, but also a very difficult and trying time emotionally, I would say.
Was there a time that was, or an instance that was particularly frightening or scary when you were covering Ferguson?
I think a lot of people would say that it would be scary, to be on the streets where there's tear gas being thrown or where there's tanks rolling around or where there's all these police officers. But I actually, as a journalist, felt a lot more scared in confrontations that I would have with people outside of meetings. There's an extreme amount of aggression towards journalists in general, particularly after national media came to town. And so there was a lot of aggression and just an anti-journalist sentiment where people had felt like we had created this mess in their town, where we were responsible for everything that was happening, that it was the media's fault that all of this was happening. So I felt far more frightened by these one-on-one confrontations or these small group confrontations where I'm just trying to cover a meeting as a journalist and I have a right to be there, and being told that I shouldn't be there, that I'm a terrible person, that I'm ruining everything. I find that much more frightening in a larger sense than, going out in a bulletproof vest and covering situations that get tense with police.
With your experience here, dual majoring in journalism and the Residential Arts and Humanities College, that kind of gave you a expertise in race relations. So I wanted to ask you about how do you think minorities will affect the election tonight?
I think that minorities play a crucial role because we're not necessarily minorities in the same sense anymore, right? Like the numbers are getting to a point where this is a nation that is not forever going to be a majority white nation. And I think that minority voters, like those are votes that both of those candidates have made appeals to go after, right? In their own ways. So I think that minority voters are super crucial to this election and super crucial to any elections moving forward. But I also think in some ways that this election in part has been about the suppression of minorities or the desire to feel like minorities aren't becoming more populous, that the majority is still in control.
All right, I'd like to transition to your time in China. You worked with the Fulbright program, and I was wondering if you could just kind of explain your role there with the Fulbright program.
Yes. So after I worked in St. Louis in public radio for a year and some change, I had the opportunity to go on a Fulbright. A Fulbright is a kind of prestigious scholarship or fellowship through the U.S. State Department where you get to work or do research or study in a foreign country. I had done work that focused on China in college. I worked on documentary film. about China, had made a lot of Chinese friends, and I really wanted the opportunity to live abroad. And I think particularly after covering such like an event like Ferguson, I was really craving like to leave the country, to be honest. So I worked in China in Macau, which is a small strategic administrative region near Hong Kong in southern China. It's known as the Vegas of Asia. They make a whole bunch more money than Vegas every day on gambling revenue. And I worked at a university there as a teacher.
So when you talk to people from China or anywhere outside of the U.S., what is their reaction to this election?
I would say that people are confused. I would say when I went places in Asia, so I traveled all over Asia, I lived in China. I can tell you that being an American, like at this time, it was kind of nice. Like people really respond positively to Obama. I remember being in the streets in Vietnam and drinking, and you would hear someone say, "Are you American?" And then they'd be like, "I love Obama. Obama's the best. Obama's so great." And then as the election started to heat up and like we started to get more of kind of this negative attention in regards to things going on with Trump, in regards to things going on with Hillary too in that case, it got kind of embarrassing to be a foreigner over there and to have people ask like questions like, is Trump really going to build a wall? Is he really going to ban all Muslims? Like, why are you guys supporting this person? Why is he even a nominee? I think a lot of people are confused because for them, the America that had been represented over the past 8 years was looking drastically different than what they had come to understand it as on a political sphere.
How about their reaction to the Democratic nominee, Clinton?
I think because I think the international media has not necessarily focused on Clinton as much because she's not saying things that people find kind of as like outrageous or like as like easy news to cover. So I didn't necessarily get so much of an impression about people's thoughts on Clinton. They weren't saying anything positive. They weren't saying anything bad. I think there's a lot more focus on Trump as a nominee just because it just seems so foreign and so strange to them compared to what we had in the past, where if you look at Hillary as an option, maybe she seems more in line with what they would expect from American politics.
So you are currently an associate producer at Gimlet Media. Can you tell us about some of your projects that you guys are working on and your role there?
Yeah, so Gimlet Media is a podcasting company that was founded by a bunch of former producers, who worked at NPR and shows like Planet Money, shows like This American Life, shows like Radio Lab. And so it's a podcast network where we do documentary long form audio. I work on a new show that's launching, and we look at events that have happened in the past 60 years. So big news events, and then we connect them to things going on in the present. So in our first season, we're looking at things like the disco riots at Comiskey Park in 1979. We're looking at the Deacons in the South during the Civil Rights era and the role that they played. We're looking at some archaeological stories, and we're also looking at the first computer dating, which actually started in the 1960s. So kind of a wide range of stuff.
All right, well, thanks again for talking with us today, Emanuele. You're watching live my first election coverage from the Spartan Newsroom on Michigan State's campus. Stay tuned all day for election coverage and interviews with Spartan alumni and live newscasts at both 6 and 8 tonight.